My wife told her friends I'm obsessed with her because I asked her not to flirt with guys at parties. Then she made out with her ex right in front of me, as a joke, while her friends filmed and chanted he deserved it. When I walked out, she posted stories dancing on random guys with captions like, "This is what happens when you try to control me," then showed up wasted at 3 a.m. saying, "Every girl cheats. At least I did it to your face." Today at noon, my phone exploded with 20-plus panicked voice messages from her. "Don't do this. Please, answer me." You know that moment when your gut starts screaming at you, but your brain keeps telling it to shut the hell up? Yeah, that was me in September. My wife Marissa had perfected this neat little trick where every legitimate concern I had about our relationship magically transformed into comedy gold for her girlfriends. It was like watching a magician, except instead of pulling rabbits out of hats, she was pulling jokes out of my genuine worries about us. It started small, the way cancer does. I'd ask her not to flirt with random dudes at parties. You know, basic married person etiquette, and she'd tilt her head with this patronizing little smile. "Babe, you're being ridiculous," she'd say, like I'd just suggested we start keeping pet dinosaurs. Then came the phone calls to her inner circle, Tina, Grace, and Leah. The holy trinity of enabling bullshit. "Oh my God, girls, you won't believe what he said now." I'd hear her whisper into her phone, usually while I was in the next room trying to pretend I wasn't listening. "He thinks I was flirting with the bartender. Can you believe it? I literally just said thank you when the guy complimented my dress." Right. Because accepting compliments from strange men while batting your eyelashes is totally normal married behavior. But what do I know? I'm just the obsessed husband, apparently. The whispers started following me everywhere. At dinner parties, I'd catch snippets of conversation that would make my stomach drop. "Clingy much?" Grace would snort, loud enough for me to hear. "Poor Marissa, having to deal with that level of jealousy," Tina would add, shaking her head like she was discussing a terminal illness. Leah was the worst, though. She had this way of looking at me like I was a wounded animal at the zoo. All pity and disgust rolled into one nauseating expression. "You know, some men are just naturally insecure," she'd say to Marissa, again, just loud enough for me to catch it. "It's not their fault they can't handle strong, independent women." Strong and independent. That's what they called it when your wife I fucked the waiter right in front of you. At first, I tried to convince myself I was losing my mind. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was one of those psycho husbands you see in movies who checks their wife's phone and follows them to work. The thought made me sick, so I'd swallow my concerns and pretend everything was fine. After all, if 3 of her closest friends thought I was being unreasonable, maybe I was the problem. But here's the thing about gaslighting. It only works if you let it. And somewhere between the 5th, "you're being dramatic," and the 10th eye roll when I brought up her behavior, I started keeping mental notes. Not in a creepy way, just observational. Like a scientist studying a particularly toxic species of snake. The pattern became crystal clear. Every time I'd voice a legitimate concern about boundaries or respect, Marissa would flip the script faster than a politician during election season. Suddenly, I wasn't a husband asking for basic courtesy. I was an obsessed, controlling maniac who couldn't handle his wife having friends. "He follows me around the house," she'd joke to her friends during their weekly wine nights. I could hear them cackling from the kitchen while I was literally just getting a glass of water. I can't even go to the bathroom without him asking where I'm going. Newsflash, honey. Asking, "Where are you headed?" when someone grabs their purse and heads for the door isn't stalking. It's called basic human communication. You know, that thing normal couples do. My coworker Aaron tried to warn me about 3 months into this nightmare. We were grabbing lunch at this dingy sandwich shop near the office, and I must have looked like I'd been hit by a truck because he put down his pastrami and gave me this look. "Dude, you look like hell," he said, not bothering to sugarcoat it. Aaron was one of those straight shooter types who'd tell you if your breath smelled like a garbage disposal. What's going on? I found myself spilling the whole mess. The parties, the flirting, the constant accusations that I was being paranoid. Aaron listened without interrupting, which should have been my first clue that this conversation was going to end with some hard truths. "Man," he said when I finished, shaking his head. "Don't ignore red flags just because you love her." At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Love conquers all, right? That's what the movies tell you. What they don't mention is that love also makes you blind, deaf, and dumb to obvious warning signs that your partner is slowly eroding your sanity one joke at a time. The worst part wasn't even the flirting or the boundary crossing. It was the way she'd made me question my own reality. I'd catch her texting someone at midnight, phone tilted away from me, and when I'd ask about it, she'd laugh. There goes my paranoid husband again. Can't a girl have private conversations? Sure, she could. But when those private conversations happened daily, usually with guys I didn't know, and always with that secretive little smirk on her face, forgive me for thinking something was fishy. The final straw in September came at Tina's housewarming party. I watched Marissa collect phone numbers from 3 different guys, each time with this elaborate performance about how networking was important for her career. Right, because exchanging contacts with Brad the bartender was definitely going to advance her marketing career. When I suggested maybe we could head home, it was past midnight and I had work the next day. She practically rolled her eyes into orbit. See what I mean? She announced to the group. Obsessed with controlling my social life. The crowd ate it up. A few guys actually laughed and patted me on the shoulder like I was some kind of joke. Let the lady have fun, man, one of them said. You've got to trust your wife. Trust. That word had become a weapon in her arsenal. Anytime I questioned anything, it wasn't about respect or boundaries. It was about trust. And apparently, I didn't have enough of it. That night, driving home in dead silence, I finally understood what Aaron meant. These weren't red flags anymore. They were giant crimson billboards with flashing neon lights spelling out danger in letters visible from space. But I was too busy trying to be the perfect, understanding husband to pay attention to the obvious. The obsessed husband joke had become her get-out-of-jail-free card for any behavior that crossed the line. Flirting with strangers? I was obsessed. Setting boundaries? I was controlling. Asking for basic respect? I was insecure. It was genius, really. She'd created this perfect little ecosystem where she could do whatever she wanted, and any objection from me just proved her point about how unreasonable I was. Her friends reinforced it, her family believed it, and even some of my own friends started giving me those concerned looks that said, maybe you should chill out, man. But here's what nobody tells you about being slowly driven insane by someone who's supposed to love you. There comes a moment when the fog lifts, just for a second, and you see the situation with brutal clarity. For me, that moment came when I realized I'd started apologizing for having feelings about my wife's behavior. Sorry I got upset when you gave that guy your number. Sorry I'm not comfortable with you staying out until 3 a.m. without telling me where you are. Sorry for being such an obsessed, controlling husband. That's when it hit me. I wasn't obsessed with her. I was obsessed with trying to save a marriage that she'd already checked out of. And while I was busy playing the part of the understanding husband, she was busy playing the part of the victim married to a psycho. September ended with me staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., listening to her peaceful breathing next to me, wondering when exactly I'd become the villain in my own love story. Aaron's words kept echoing in my head. Don't ignore red flags just because you love her. Well, guess what? I was done ignoring them. Time to start paying attention to what was right in front of me, even if it was going to hurt like hell. Derek's birthday party was supposed to be fun. You know, one of those chill house parties where you drink cheap beer, complain about work, and pretend you're still in your 20s even though your back hurts from sleeping wrong. Instead, it turned into the kind of nightmare that makes you question every life choice you've ever made, starting with saying, I do, to someone who apparently missed the memo about what marriage means. The house was packed tighter than a subway car during rush hour. Derek had invited half the city, and the other half had showed up uninvited. Music was thumping so loud I could feel it in my chest, and the smell of cheap cologne mixed with cheaper beer filled the air. Classic house party vibes, except for the part where my wife was about to publicly destroy our marriage for entertainment. Marissa looked incredible, of course. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, which should have been my first warning sign since Derek's idea of formal attire was a clean t-shirt. She was wearing this little black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't proud walking in with her on my arm. For about 5 minutes, I actually thought we might have a good time. Then Logan walked in. Logan fucking Mitchell. Her ex-boyfriend from college, the guy she dated for 2 years before we met. The same Logan she'd sworn was ancient history and totally irrelevant to our relationship. Yet somehow, This irrelevant piece of ancient history had managed to score an invite to Derek's party, and judging by the way Marissa's entire posture changed when he walked through the door, she'd known he'd be there. "Oh wow, Logan's here," she said, and I swear to God, her voice went up like 3 octaves. Like she was genuinely shocked to see him, as if Derek hadn't probably texted her the guest list a week ago. "Yeah, what a coincidence," I muttered, grabbing a beer from the cooler and trying to ignore the way she was already scanning the room for him. Within 10 minutes, she'd found an excuse to drift in his direction. "I should say hi," she announced. "It would be rude not to, right?" Right. Because rudeness was suddenly a huge concern for the woman who'd spent the last month telling our friends I was obsessed with her. I tried to play it cool, I really did. I hung out by the beer pong table, made small talk with some of Derek's work buddies, even laughed at a few genuinely terrible jokes. But I couldn't help watching her out of the corner of my eye, and what I saw made my stomach turn. She wasn't just saying hi. She was performing, touching his arm when she laughed, leaning in way too close when he talked, playing with her hair in that way she used to do when we were first dating. Every gesture was calculated, deliberate, and designed to send a message. The question was, who was the message for? "Dude, you okay?" Some guy named Mike had sidled up next to me, following my gaze across the room. "You look like you're about to murder someone." "Just peachy," I said, taking a long pull from my beer. "Nothing like watching your wife flirt with her ex at a party." Mike winced. "Ouch. That's rough, man." Meanwhile, Tina, Grace, and Leah had materialized around Marissa like her personal hype squad. They were giggling and whispering, occasionally shooting glances in my direction. I could practically hear their conversation. "Look at him. So jealous. Marissa deserves better. She should totally make him sweat." And then she started touching him. Not accidentally, not casually. Deliberately. Her hand slid down his arm when she laughed at something he said. She pressed against him when someone squeezed past them in the crowded room. Every movement was a declaration of war, and she kept looking at me to make sure I was watching. I was watching, all right. I was watching my wife systematically disrespect our marriage in front of a room full of people, many of whom I'd have to face at future social events. I was watching her turn our relationship into entertainment for her friends. I was watching the woman I'd promised to love and honor treat me like a joke. The crowd around them was getting bigger. Someone had turned the music down slightly, and I could hear them laughing. Derek raised his beer and shouted something about old friends reuniting, which got a cheer from the group. Marissa was eating up the attention, her face flushed with alcohol and the thrill of having an audience. That's when she looked directly at me across the room. Not a glance, not a quick peek, a full-on stare. She held my gaze for what felt like forever, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes. This wasn't about Logan. This wasn't about having fun. This was about power. This was about proving she could do whatever she wanted, and I'd just have to take it. She smiled. Actually smiled at me while her hand was still on Logan's chest. And then she kissed him. Not a quick peck, not an accidental brush of lips. A full, deep, passionate kiss that went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 seconds. 10 seconds that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. 10 seconds that turned me into that guy. The one everyone pities at parties. The one whose wife makes out with other men while he stands there like an idiot. The reaction was immediate. Grace whipped out her phone and started filming. Tina was clapping like she was at a goddamn Broadway show. Leah cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "He deserved it," like Marissa had just scored the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. The crowd erupted. Some people were laughing, others were cheering, and a few looked genuinely uncomfortable but didn't say anything. Because why would they? This was premium drama, the kind of shit people would be talking about for months. Remember Derek's party when Marissa totally destroyed her husband? Epic. I stood there frozen, beer still in my hand, watching my wife pull away from Logan with the biggest smile I'd seen on her face in months. She looked triumphant, vindicated, like she'd just proven some important point about female empowerment or standing up to controlling men. The humiliation hit me like a physical force. It started in my chest and radiated outward until my entire body felt like it was on fire. Every person in that room was looking at me, waiting to see how I'd react. Would I make a scene? Would I storm over there and drag her away? Would I punch Logan in his smug face? Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I set down my beer, walked to the front door, and left. No dramatic exit speech, no confrontation, no begging. I just left. The walk to my car felt like a death march. Each step was heavier than the last, and I could hear the party continuing behind me like nothing had happened. Like my marriage hadn't just been publicly executed for everyone's entertainment. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone was already buzzing. Text after text, all from Marissa. Where did you go? Don't be dramatic. Come back inside. You're embarrassing me. It was just a kiss. Stop overreacting. Just a kiss. Right. Because tongue wrestling your ex-boyfriend at a party while your husband watches is totally normal behavior that I was overreacting to. Then came the phone calls. Ring after ring after ring. I let them all go to voicemail while I sat in my car, staring at the house where my wife was probably explaining to everyone how I was too insecure to handle her friendship with Logan. The final text came 20 minutes later. Fine. Be childish. But don't expect me to apologize for living my life. Living her life. That's what she called making out with her ex-boyfriend in front of a room full of people. Living her best life, I guess. I drove home in complete silence, my mind replaying the entire scene on an endless loop. The way she'd looked at me before she kissed him. The sound of her friends cheering. The feeling of standing there like a complete fool while my wife publicly humiliated me. But the worst part? The absolute worst fucking part was knowing that when I got home and tried to explain how I felt, she'd find a way to make it my fault. She'd tell me I was being dramatic, that I was reading too much into things, that I was the one with the problem for not being cool with my wife kissing other men. And her friends would back her up, because that's what they did. They enabled her worst behavior and painted me as the villain for not being okay with it. As I pulled into our driveway, I realized Aaron had been right about the red flags. They weren't subtle hints or minor concerns anymore. They were giant, flashing warning signs, and I'd been ignoring them because I didn't want to face the truth about what my marriage had become. The truth was simple and devastating. My wife didn't respect me. Worse than that, she actively enjoyed disrespecting me in front of other people. And the scariest part? I'd been letting her do it for months, convinced that being a good husband meant taking whatever she dished out with a smile. Well, guess what? The smile was officially gone. You'd think humiliating your husband in front of 30 people would be enough for one night. But apparently Marissa was just getting warmed up, because while I was sitting at home, staring at the ceiling and wondering what the hell had happened to my marriage, she was busy documenting her liberation for the entire internet to see. The first Instagram story notification hit my phone around 11 p.m. I almost ignored it. Honestly, I was emotionally drained and just wanted to pretend the whole night hadn't happened. But curiosity is a bitch, and masochism runs deep, so I opened it. There she was, dancing with some random guy I'd never seen before. Not just dancing, grinding. His hands were on her waist, she was pressed up against him, and the caption read, "Finally dancing with someone who knows how to have fun woman dancing sparkles." The dig was subtle but crystal clear. Someone who knows how to have fun, as opposed to her uptight, obsessed husband who couldn't handle watching his wife make out with her ex. I screenshot it before it disappeared, my hands actually shaking. Not from anger. Well, not just anger, but from this sick combination of betrayal and disbelief. This was my wife. The woman who'd promised to love and cherish me. The woman who, just 6 hours ago, had kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me before we left for the party. Story number 2 dropped 15 minutes later. Another guy, another dance, another caption designed to twist the knife. This is what happens when you try to control me, face with rolling eyes. Control her. Right. Because asking your spouse not to tongue wrestle their ex at parties is basically domestic tyranny. By midnight, she'd posted 7 stories. 7. Each one more deliberately hurtful than the last. There was one of her doing shots with a group of guys I didn't recognize, captioned, "New friends who don't come with baggage." Another showed her on some dude's lap during what looked like a game of truth or dare, with the caption, "Freedom feels so good." But the 8th story, that was the one that made me want to put my fist through the wall. It was a video of her making out with not one, but 2 different guys at the party. The caption read, "Single life hits different kiss mark," and she'd tagged Tina, Grace, and Leah in every single fucking story. Single life. We were still married. I was sitting in our house, looking at our wedding photos on the mantle, and she was telling the internet she was single. My phone buzzed with notifications. Comments, likes, heart eye emojis from her friends. YSSS Queen, from Grace. Get it, girl, from Tina. About time, from Leah. Even people I barely knew were commenting. Egging her on like this was some kind of empowerment moment instead of a married woman publicly destroying her husband. I kept screenshotting everything, partly for evidence and partly because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Each story felt like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't stop watching. It was like passing a car accident, horrifying but impossible to look away from. Around 1 a.m., she posted what I thought would be the final story. A group selfie with about 6 guys, everyone holding drinks, everyone laughing. The caption, "Why settle for one when you can have them all?" Smiling face with horns. That one made me physically nauseous. I actually had to put my phone down and take deep breaths to keep from throwing up. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was cruelty. This was my wife, the person who was supposed to have my back, publicly humiliating me for sport. But wait, there's more. Because at 2:30 a.m., like some kind of sadistic infomercial, she dropped the grand finale. A video of her slow dancing with Logan, her head on his shoulder, looking more content than I'd seen her look with me in months. The caption was simple: "Some people just get you." And there it was. The final nail in the coffin of our marriage, delivered via Instagram story for maximum impact. I must have watched that last video 50 times, looking for some sign that this was all just alcohol-fueled stupidity. Some indication that she'd regret it in the morning. But the way she looked at him, the way she melted into his arms, that wasn't drunk behavior. That was someone who'd found exactly what she'd been looking for. At 3 a.m., I heard her car in the driveway. I was still on the couch, still holding my phone, still processing the digital devastation she'd unleashed. Part of me wanted to pretend to be asleep, to avoid the conversation I knew was coming. But a bigger part of me, the part that was apparently a glutton for punishment, wanted to see how she'd try to spin this. The front door opened, and she stumbled in, clearly wasted. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was smudged, and she reeked of cigarettes and some cologne that definitely wasn't mine. She looked like she'd been through a hurricane, but she was smiling. Actually fucking smiling. "Hey babe," she slurred, leaning against the doorframe like she was posing for another Instagram story. "You're still up. Hard to sleep when your wife is posting softcore porn on social media," I said, holding up my phone to show her the screenshots. She squinted at the screen, then laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an embarrassed laugh. A genuine, amused laugh like I'd just told her a really good joke. "Oh, those," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Come on, don't be so uptight. It was just a party." "Just a party, right. And the Titanic was just a boat ride. You made out with Logan," I said, my voice eerily calm considering the rage building in my chest. "On camera. And posted it online." She shrugged, actually fucking shrugged, and kicked off her heels. "So? We're not together anymore. It's not like it means anything. We're married, Marissa." "Yeah. And you left me at the party like a child," she shot back, her tone shifting from drunk and playful to sharp and defensive. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." The audacity was breathtaking. I'd embarrassed her by leaving after watching her tongue wrestle her ex-boyfriend. But her making out with multiple men and posting it online was just harmless fun. "You told the internet you were single," I continued, scrolling through the screenshots. "You literally captioned a video, 'Single life, hits different.'" She stumbled over to the couch and collapsed next to me, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on her breath mixed with that unfamiliar cologne. "Baby, you're being way too serious about this," she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "It's just social media. Nobody takes that stuff seriously. Nobody except the hundreds of people who'd seen it, including our friends, family members, and coworkers who followed her account. Every girl cheats," she said suddenly, her voice matter-of-fact like she was discussing the weather. "At least I did it to your face." The words hit me like a physical blow. Every girl cheats. Like it was some universal truth, some biological imperative that I was too naive to understand. And she was proud of her honesty, proud that she'd humiliated me publicly instead of doing it behind my back. "That's what makes me a good wife," she continued, leaning her head back against the couch cushion. "I don't sneak around. I don't lie. I show you exactly who I am." She was right about that last part. She was showing me exactly who she was. Someone who thought marriage vows were suggestions, someone who believed respect was optional, someone who got off on causing me pain. You're drunk, I said, standing up and putting distance between us. We'll talk about this tomorrow. No, we won't, she said, her eyes still closed but her voice sharp. Because tomorrow you'll apologize for being dramatic, and I'll forgive you for embarrassing me at Derek's party, and we'll go back to normal. That's how this works. That's how this works. Like our marriage was some kind of scripted drama where I played the apologetic husband and she played the misunderstood wife. Like my feelings were just props in her performance. She struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. You know what your problem is? She said, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. You take everything so seriously. It was just kissing. It was just dancing. It was just having fun. You act like I committed murder. Just kissing. Just dancing. Just having fun. Just destroying our marriage one Instagram story at a time. I'm going to bed, I said, heading toward the stairs. Good, she called after me. Maybe sleeping alone will help you remember what you're fighting for. I stopped halfway up the stairs and turned back to look at her. She was slumped on the couch, scrolling through her phone, probably reading all the comments and likes on her stories. She looked satisfied, accomplished, like she'd just had the best night of her life. That's when it hit me. She wasn't drunk rambling or saying things she didn't mean. She was telling me the truth. This was who she really was when she thought she could get away with it. This was my wife without the mask. Every girl cheats. The words echoed in my head as I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't just kissed Logan. She'd kissed multiple guys, danced with strangers, and broadcast it all like it was some kind of victory lap. And in her mind, I was the problem for not being okay with it. I grabbed my phone and looked at the stories one more time before they expired. Each one was a little piece of our marriage dying in real time, documented and celebrated for posterity. Tomorrow, they'd be gone from her profile, but the screenshots would remain. Evidence of the night my wife showed me exactly how little our marriage meant to her. The worst part wasn't even the cheating or the public humiliation. It was the realization that this had been building for months, maybe longer. All those times she'd called me obsessed or controlling, all those whispered conversations with her friends. This was what she'd been working toward. The freedom to do whatever she wanted without consequences. Well, congratulations, Marissa. Mission fucking accomplished. You know what's funny about hitting rock bottom? The view is actually pretty clear from down there. All the bullshit that seemed complicated before suddenly becomes simple. All the excuses you made for someone's behavior stop making sense. And all the power they thought they had over you just evaporates. That's where I found myself Saturday morning, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, staring at my phone like it was a loaded weapon. For months, maybe years, I'd been playing Marissa's game by her rules. Every time she crossed a line, I'd react exactly how she expected. I'd get upset, we'd fight. I'd eventually apologize for being too sensitive, and she'd graciously forgive me for having feelings. Well, fuck that game. Time to change the rules. I turned my phone off. Not on silent. Not on do not disturb. Completely off. The sudden quiet was almost jarring after months of constant notifications, calls, and text battles. For the first time in forever, I could actually hear myself think without Marissa's voice drowning out my own thoughts. The plan was simple, complete radio silence. No calls, no texts, no social media interactions, nothing. If Marissa wanted to act single, I'd let her experience what being single actually felt like. No husband to blame for her problems, no emotional punching bag to absorb her drama, no guaranteed audience for her victim performance. I tried everything else: reasoning, fighting, compromise, therapy suggestions. None of it worked because you can't reason with someone who doesn't want to be reasonable. You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. But you can remove yourself from the equation entirely. Sunday came and went in blissful silence. I cleaned the house, watched football, ordered pizza, and did absolutely nothing that involved thinking about my wife or our train wreck of a marriage. It was the most peaceful day I'd had in months. Monday morning, I turned my phone back on just long enough to check work messages. 3 missed calls from Marissa, all from Sunday evening. No voicemails. Interesting. Usually she'd leave long, rambling messages about how I was being immature or dramatic. The fact that she hadn't left any told me she was starting to realize this wasn't business as usual. I turned the phone back off and went to work. Tuesday was when things got interesting. I could practically feel her confusion through the walls of our house as I got ready for work. She was awake. I could hear her moving around in the bedroom, but I didn't acknowledge her. Didn't say good morning, didn't ask about her hangover, didn't even look in her direction. I grabbed my coffee, my keys, and left like she was a piece of furniture. When I got to work, Aaron took one look at me and grinned. "You look different," he said. "Less like someone's been slowly murdering your soul." "Funny you should mention that," I said, settling into my desk chair with my first genuine smile in weeks. I think my soul might actually be growing back. By lunch, my phone, which I'd turned on to check work emails, showed 17 missed calls from Marissa. 17. That was more calls than she'd made to me in the previous month combined. Still no voicemails, but the text had started. "Why aren't you answering your phone? This is ridiculous. You're being childish. We need to talk like adults. Call me back now." Each text was progressively more desperate, and I could practically see her panic growing with every unanswered message. For the first time in our relationship, I wasn't dancing to her tune, and she had no idea how to handle it. I deleted the texts without responding and turned the phone back off. Wednesday brought escalation. 23 missed calls. The texts had evolved from demanding to pleading. "Baby, please call me back. I know you're upset, but this silent treatment isn't solving anything. Can we please just talk? I miss you." Miss me? She missed having someone to blame for her problems. She missed having a guaranteed audience for her drama. She missed the power she'd held over me for months. But she didn't miss me. If she'd missed me, she wouldn't have spent Saturday night making out with half the party while posting it online for everyone to see. Thursday was my personal favorite. 31 missed calls and a text marathon that would have impressed a teenager. This is insane. You can't just ignore me forever. I was drunk. People do stupid things when they're drunk. Why are you being so dramatic about one stupid kiss? Logan means nothing to me. You're my husband. Act like it. Fine. Be a baby. See if I care. Wait, I didn't mean that. Please just call me. I'm sorry you got upset. That last one was my favorite. She was sorry I got upset. Not sorry for what she did. Not sorry for humiliating me. Not sorry for posting it online. Sorry that I had the audacity to have feelings about watching my wife cheat on me in public. Classic Marissa. Even her apologies were about my reactions, not her actions. Friday afternoon, my sister Clara called me at work. "What the hell is going on with you and Marissa?" she asked without preamble. She called Mom crying about how you're giving her the silent treatment over nothing. There it was. When the direct approach failed, Marissa had moved to phase 2, recruit family members to guilt me into submission. She kissed her ex-boyfriend at a party and posted videos of herself making out with random guys on Instagram. I said calmly, "How exactly is that nothing?" Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Jesus Christ. Are you serious?" "Dead serious. And she's calling it nothing?" Apparently, I'm being dramatic and controlling for not being thrilled about it. Clara let out a long breath. "You know, I never really liked her," she said. "But I figured that was just protective sister stuff. Now I'm thinking my instincts were spot on. It was funny how other people could see what I'd been blind to for months." Clara had always been polite to Marissa, but never warm, never enthusiastic about our relationship. I'd chalked it up to typical sister-in-law dynamics, but maybe she'd been seeing red flags I'd been too love-drunk to notice. "She doesn't fear losing you because you've never let her," Clara continued. "Every time she pulls this crap, you chase after her, apologize, try to fix things. She's learned that no matter how badly she treats you, you'll always come crawling back." The truth hurt, but it was the kind of pain that clarifies things. Like setting a broken bone, agonizing but necessary. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Absolutely nothing." And that's exactly what I did. Nothing. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. I went to work, came home, made dinner for one, and lived my life like I was actually single instead of just pretending to be on social media. The missed calls kept coming, sometimes 20 a day. The texts grew increasingly frantic, cycling between anger and desperation like she was stuck in some kind of emotional washing machine. She'd go from, "You're being ridiculous," to "Please don't give up on us," within the span of an hour. By the following Tuesday, something had shifted. The texts weren't coming in angry bursts anymore. They were scattered throughout the day, each one more vulnerable than the last. "I can't eat. I can't sleep. Please just tell me you still love me. I don't understand what's happening." That last one almost made me laugh. She didn't understand what was happening? For the first time in our relationship, I wasn't absorbing her bad behavior and apologizing for my reactions. For the first time, there were actual consequences for treating me like garbage. Of course, she didn't understand. This had never happened before. The really beautiful part was watching her scramble to regain control. She tried everything, sending her friends to text me, blocked, having her mom call, ignored, even showing up at places she thought I might be. But I was a ghost, completely unavailable for her usual manipulation tactics. My silence had become a mirror, reflecting her behavior back at her without my usual cushioning of explanations and forgiveness. And she didn't like what she saw. For years, I'd been her emotional shock absorber, soaking up all the impact of her selfish choices so she never had to feel the consequences. Every time she crossed a line, I'd been there to minimize the damage, make excuses, smooth things over. I'd trained her to believe that no matter what she did, I'd always be there to clean up the mess. Well, surprise. The cleanup crew had gone on strike indefinitely. Friday rolled around like a ticking time bomb, and I should have known Marissa wouldn't go quietly into that good night of being ignored. See, the thing about people who are used to getting their way is that when you stop playing their game, they don't just accept defeat, they escalate. They bring out the big guns. And in Marissa's case, the big guns apparently meant staging a public intervention at my workplace like some kind of deranged relationship terrorist. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when Aaron appeared at my cubicle looking like he'd just witnessed a car accident. His face was this perfect mixture of concern and barely contained amusement, which immediately put me on high alert. "Dude," he said, glancing around to make sure nobody else was listening. "Some lady's in the lobby making a scene. Security's trying to calm her down, but she's demanding to see you. Says she's your wife." My stomach dropped straight through the floor and into the building's foundation. Blonde, about 5'6", looks like she could murder someone with her eyeballs. "That's the one," Aaron confirmed. "She's got this whole, 'I'm a victim of domestic abuse' vibe going on, except instead of asking for help, she's demanding they produce you immediately or she's calling corporate." Of course she was. Because when emotional manipulation fails, the next logical step is professional sabotage. I could practically picture her in the lobby, probably wearing something calculated to make her look vulnerable yet determined, telling everyone who'd listen about her poor husband who'd been acting strangely lately. "Want me to tell security you're not available?" Aaron offered. The temptation was real. I could hide in the office until she got tired and left, avoid the whole confrontation, and maintain my silent strategy. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe stupidity, maybe just exhaustion from running away, decided it was time to face the music. "No," I said, standing up and straightening my tie. "If she wants a showdown, she can have one." The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like descending into hell, except hell probably had better mood lighting. When the doors opened, I could hear her before I could see her, that particular pitch of indignation that meant she was in full performance mode. There she was, center stage in our building's lobby, surrounded by confused security guards and a growing audience of my coworkers who'd come down for their lunch break. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a simple dress that screamed responsible wife, minimal makeup to emphasize her distress, and body language that suggested she was barely holding herself together. The performance was masterful, really. She should have gone into theater. The second she spotted me, her entire demeanor shifted. The frantic energy evaporated, replaced by this calculated vulnerability that made my skin crawl. She approached me like I was a wild animal that might bolt at any second. "There you are," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, but soft enough to sound concerned rather than accusatory. "I've been so worried about you." Worried, right. She'd been worried about losing control of the narrative, not worried about my well-being. "Marissa," I said evenly, very aware that half my office was now watching this unfold like it was better than cable TV. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," she said, stepping closer and lowering her voice to an intimate whisper that somehow managed to carry across the entire lobby. Like adults. This silent treatment is killing me. The audacity was breathtaking. After a week of completely ignoring my existence except to post revenge porn on Instagram, she was positioning herself as the mature one trying to fix our relationship. The woman who'd made out with her ex-boyfriend in front of 30 people was lecturing me about adult communication. "I'm at work," I pointed out, gesturing to the obvious office building around us. This isn't the place for personal conversations. Then where is? She demanded. And there it was, a flash of the real Marissa underneath the concerned wife act. You won't answer your phone, you won't come home, you won't talk to me. What choice did I have? Home. That was rich. I'd been living in our house all week while she stayed God knows where, probably with Tina, or at some guy's place she'd met at Derek's party. But sure, I was the one who wouldn't come home. My coworkers were pretending to mind their own business, but I could feel their attention like heat lamps. Sarah from accounting was openly staring while pretending to check her phone. Mike from IT had suddenly developed a fascination with the lobby's architectural details. Even building security looked invested in how this drama would unfold. You want to talk like adults? I said, matching her volume so everyone could hear. Fine. Let's talk about Saturday night. Her face went pale. This wasn't part of her script. She'd come here expecting to paint me as the unreasonable husband who was punishing his innocent wife for no reason. She hadn't counted on me being willing to air our dirty laundry in front of my colleagues. We don't need to, she stammered, glancing around nervously at our growing audience. No, let's do this. I continued, my voice getting stronger. Let's talk about how you made out with your ex-boyfriend at a party. Let's talk about the Instagram stories where you grinded on random guys and told the internet you were single. Let's talk about coming home at 3 a.m. telling me every girl cheats, and I should be grateful you did it to my face. The lobby had gone dead silent. Even the security guards had stopped pretending they weren't listening. Marissa's carefully constructed victim narrative was crumbling in real time, and she knew it. You're embarrassing me, she hissed, but her voice cracked on the last word. I'm embarrassing you? I let out a laugh that came out harsher than I intended. Lady, you embarrassed yourself. I'm just providing context. She tried to recover, switching tactics like a politician caught in a scandal. I was drunk, she said, her voice taking on that pleading tone she used when she wanted sympathy. People do stupid things when they're drunk. You know I didn't mean any of it. Which part didn't you mean? I asked. The kissing? The dancing? The part where you told me every girl cheats? Or the part where you called our marriage a joke on social media? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She'd never had to defend her behavior in front of an audience before. Usually, our fights happened in private where she could manipulate the narrative and make me feel crazy for having reasonable expectations. We can fix this, she said desperately, reaching for my arm. We just need to communicate better. I know we can work through this if you just... No, I said, stepping back so she couldn't touch me. We're done. The words came out clearer and stronger than I'd expected. For months, I'd been afraid to say them, terrified of what my life would look like without her. But standing there in that lobby, surrounded by witnesses, I realized the life I'd been trying to save wasn't worth saving. Her face went through about 6 different emotions in rapid succession: shock, anger, disbelief, panic, and finally, desperation. You don't mean that, she said, but her voice was barely above a whisper now. I mean every word of it, I said. I'm done being your emotional punching bag. I'm done making excuses for your behavior. I'm done pretending that what you did was normal or acceptable or forgivable. The lobby was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was frozen, like they were afraid any movement would break the spell and interrupt the best drama they'd seen all year. But I love you, Marissa said, and for a split second, she almost sounded sincere. Almost. No, you don't, I replied. You love having someone to blame for your problems. You love having a husband you can disrespect without consequences. You love the safety net I provided while you acted single. But you don't love me. She started crying then. Real tears, not the calculated ones she usually deployed during arguments. But even as the waterworks started, I could see her scanning the crowd, calculating how this breakdown would play with our audience. Everyone makes mistakes, she sobbed, playing to the room now. Marriage is about forgiveness, about working through problems together. You're right, I said. Marriage is about working through problems together. It's also about respect, loyalty, and not making out with your ex-boyfriend at parties. Funny how you forgot those parts. The tears were flowing freely now, and I could see a few people in the crowd starting to look sympathetic. Marissa had always been good at playing the victim when cornered, and crying beautiful women tend to get the benefit of the doubt from strangers. But I was done caring about optics. I was done protecting her reputation at the expense of my sanity. I made one mistake, she pleaded. One stupid, drunk mistake. Please don't throw away 3 years of marriage over one night. One mistake. She was still trying to minimize it, still trying to rewrite history to make herself look better. The Instagram stories, the grinding, the multiple make-out sessions, all condensed into one mistake, like she'd accidentally ordered the wrong coffee. It wasn't one mistake, I said firmly. It was months of disrespect building up to one public humiliation. The kissing was just the grand finale. I turned to walk away, and she grabbed my arm. Please, she whispered, don't do this. Not here. Not like this. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the triumphant smile on her face when she kissed Logan. I remembered her laughing as her friends filmed it. I remembered her telling me every girl cheats like it was some kind of universal truth I was too naive to understand. You did this, I said, gently but firmly removing her hand from my arm. Not here, not like this. You chose the when and where when you decided to destroy our marriage at a party. I'm just choosing not to pretend it didn't happen. And with that, I walked away. For the first time in our entire relationship, I walked away while she was still talking, while she was still crying, while she was still expecting me to cave and comfort her and apologize for my reaction to her betrayal. But I didn't look back. Not once. Saturday morning brought the kind of phone call that makes you want to throw your device into the nearest body of water. My phone buzzed at 8 a.m. sharp, because apparently destroying marriages is an early bird activity, and the caller ID showed Marissa's mom, Patricia. I should have let it go to voicemail, but curiosity killed the cat, and I was apparently the cat in this scenario. Hello, Patricia, I answered, already knowing this conversation was going to be about as pleasant as a root canal performed with rusty garden tools. Oh, honey, she started, her voice dripping with that fake sympathy that older women perfect after decades of meddling in other people's business. I heard about your little fight with Marissa. She's absolutely heartbroken. Little fight. Right. Because public adultery followed by social media humiliation was just a little fight between married couples. Like arguing over whose turn it was to take out the trash. Patricia, I don't think Marissa gave you the full story, I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though I wanted to scream into the phone. She told me everything. Patricia interrupted, her tone shifting from sympathetic to defensive faster than a NASCAR driver changing lanes. She said you got jealous over her talking to an old friend, and now you're punishing her with this silent treatment. Honestly, I'm disappointed in you. Talking to an old friend. That's what we were calling tongue wrestling your ex-boyfriend now. The English language was truly a beautiful thing in the hands of someone determined to rewrite reality. She kissed him, Patricia, at a party, in front of 30 people, then posted videos of herself making out with other guys on Instagram. Silence. Then, well, she was drinking. You know how girls get when they've had a few. She doesn't handle alcohol well. The excuse-making was Olympic level. Apparently, alcohol was a magical substance that temporarily erased marriage vows and common decency. Who knew? Drinking doesn't make you cheat, I said. It just removes the inhibition to do what you already wanted to do. Don't be so dramatic, Patricia snapped. Marriage is about forgiveness. It's about working through problems together, not running away at the first sign of trouble. First sign of trouble. Like I'd bailed after she left a dirty dish in the sink instead of after months of gaslighting followed by public adultery. She loves you. Patricia continued, really warming up to her speech now. She made a mistake, a silly, drunk mistake, and now you're throwing away 3 years of marriage over it. Don't you think that's a bit extreme? There it was again. The minimization, the blame shifting, the complete refusal to acknowledge what had actually happened. Marissa had learned these tactics somewhere, and now I knew where. The apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. It had barely rolled off the branch. I appreciate your concern. I lied through my teeth. But this is between Marissa and me. That poor girl is beside herself. Patricia pressed on, apparently immune to social cues about ending conversations. She can barely eat, can barely sleep. Is this really what you want? To hurt someone you claim to love? Poor girl. The poor girl who'd spent last Saturday grinding on strangers and broadcasting it to the world. My heart was absolutely breaking for her. I hung up. Within an hour, my own phone rang again. This time it was my mother, Elaine, and the fury in her voice was immediately apparent. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she started without preamble. "Patricia Williams just called me crying about how you're treating Marissa. She says you're being cruel and vindictive over some silly party incident." Oh, perfect. The mothers had formed an alliance. This was exactly what my Friday needed. A tag team guilt session from two women who'd gotten a completely fabricated version of events. "Mom, let me explain what actually." "No, you let me explain something," she interrupted, her voice hitting that particular frequency that meant she was in full lecture mode. "Marriage isn't easy. It takes work, compromise, and forgiveness. You can't just throw it away because your wife had a few drinks and talked to an old friend." Talk to an old friend. Jesus Christ, the narrative was evolving faster than a virus. First it was talking, then it became being friendly, and apparently now it was just casual conversation with a former acquaintance. "She didn't just talk to him, Mom. I don't want to hear excuses." Elaine cut me off. "Patricia told me everything. Marissa was being social at a party. You got jealous, and now you're punishing her by refusing to communicate. That's not how marriage works." The irony was suffocating. My mother was lecturing me about how marriage works based on information from the woman whose daughter had just publicly cheated on me. It was like getting relationship advice from someone whose primary source was a pathological liar. "You need to apologize," she continued, really hitting her stride now. "You need to go home, sit down with your wife, and work this out like adults. This silent treatment nonsense is childish and cruel." I could hear my father in the background asking what was going on. More voices joining the conversation. Apparently, this had turned into a family conference call about my failing marriage. Perfect. Nothing says healthy relationship dynamics like having your parents gang up on you based on your cheating wife's victim narrative. "She says you've been acting unstable lately," Mom added, and that word hit me like a slap. "Patricia's worried about your mental state. Maybe you should talk to someone, get some help." Unstable. Now I was mentally ill for not wanting to be married to someone who treated our vows like suggestions. The gaslighting had reached professional levels. Not only was I wrong for being upset, I was literally crazy for having feelings about public infidelity. That's when something inside me finally snapped. Not in a violent way, but in a clarity way, like fog lifting to reveal the landscape you've been stumbling through blind. "Mom, I need to send you something," I said, putting the call on speaker and opening my phone's photo gallery. "Give me your number." What? Just trust me. I think you need to see what really happened before you lecture me about forgiveness." I could hear her dictating her number to Dad, probably thinking I was about to send her some ridiculous evidence of my paranoia. Boy, was she in for a treat. I forwarded her the screenshots, all of them. The Instagram stories, the text messages, the whole digital record of Saturday night's festivities. Every caption, every video, every piece of evidence that proved Marissa's version of events was complete fiction. "Look at your phone," I said. Silence. Then rustling sounds as she presumably opened the messages. Then a long, sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Keep scrolling," I said. "There's more." More silence. More rustling. Then my father's voice in the background. "What is it, Elaine? What's wrong?" She posted videos of herself. Mom's voice trailed off like she couldn't quite process what she was seeing. "Keep going," I said grimly. "You haven't gotten to the good part yet." Another minute passed. I could hear my parents whispering to each other, their voices getting more upset with each screenshot. The caption says, "Single life hits different," Mom said finally, her voice hollow. She's dancing with 3 different men. "Now do you understand why I'm not rushing to apologize?" I asked. Jesus Christ. Dad's voice came through clearly now. "Son, I'm sorry. We had no idea." "Because she lied to you," I said, "just like she's been lying to me for months. Patricia called you with a completely made-up version of events, and you believed it because why wouldn't you? Who lies about something like this?" "Sociopaths," Aaron said from behind me. I hadn't heard him approach, but apparently he'd come down to check on me and caught the tail end of my family conference call. "Sociopaths lie about stuff like this." Mom was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Honey, I owe you an enormous apology." Patricia painted a completely different picture. She said Marissa was being friendly and you got upset over nothing. "She's been calling me unstable and vindictive," I said, "telling everyone who'll listen that I'm mentally ill for not wanting my wife to cheat on me." That manipulative little, Dad started, then caught himself. I'm sorry, son. We should have listened to your side first. It's fine, I said, though it really wasn't. Now you know why I'm not answering her calls. Good, Mom said firmly. Don't answer them. That girl needs to face consequences for once in her life. The conversation ended with promises to support whatever decision I made and threats to give Patricia a piece of their mind the next time she called with Marissa's sob stories. Apparently, seeing actual evidence had a way of clarifying things that emotional manipulation couldn't overcome. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had people in my corner who understood what I was dealing with. People who'd seen the evidence and recognized it for what it was. Calculated cruelty disguised as drunken mistakes. Aaron clapped me on the shoulder. Man, that was brutal to watch, but you handled it perfectly. Thanks for having my back, I said. Always, he replied. Besides, now the whole office knows your wife's crazy. That should make the divorce proceedings interesting. Divorce. The word didn't scare me anymore. If anything, it sounded like freedom. You know what they say about cornered animals? They get vicious. Well, turns out cornered wives who've lost control of their narrative don't just get vicious. They go full psycho-stalker mode. And let me tell you, having your own spouse transform into your personal nightmare is exactly as fun as it sounds. When Marissa realized that public humiliation and family manipulation weren't working, she decided to take her show on the road. Literally. The woman who'd spent months calling me obsessed had apparently decided to give me a masterclass in what actual obsession looked like. It started with the late-night text bombardments. I'm talking military-level psychological warfare through digital communication. One night, I'll never forget it because I actually counted. She sent me 29 text messages between 2 and 5 a.m. 29. That's roughly one every 6 minutes for 3 straight hours. The dedication was almost impressive if it wasn't so completely unhinged. The messages themselves were a roller coaster of emotion that would have given a therapist enough material for a doctoral thesis. She'd start sweet. Baby, I miss you so much. Please just talk to me. Then escalate to desperate. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I feel like I'm dying without you. Then spiral into rage. You're being a fucking child. This is ridiculous. My personal favorite from that particular night was, you're destroying everything over one joke. One joke. Do you hear how insane that sounds? One joke. She was still calling it a joke. Making out with her ex-boyfriend in front of 30 people while her friends filmed it was apparently peak comedy. I should have been laughing instead of filing for divorce, according to Marissa's twisted logic. But the real gems came around 4 a.m. when the alcohol or desperation or whatever demon was possessing her really took hold. I can't live without you. I'll make sure you regret this. You think you're so perfect, but you're not. I know things about you that would destroy you. Please, baby, please, please, please call me back. I fucking hate you. I didn't mean that I love you so much. Reading through them the next morning was like watching someone have a complete mental breakdown in real time via text message. The woman who'd spent months gaslighting me about being obsessive was sending me novel-length messages in the middle of the night, threatening me 1 minute and professing love the next. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But text messages were apparently just the opening act. Tuesday evening, I came home from work to find my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, waiting for me in her front yard with this expression that said she had some serious tea to spill. Your wife's been sitting on your parents' porch since noon. She informed me, clearly delighted to be the bearer of dramatic news. Just sitting there, crying. Wouldn't leave when your dad asked her to. My parents' house. She'd driven 20 minutes across town to stage a sit-in at my childhood home. The woman who couldn't be bothered to text me back for hours when we were actually together had apparently developed the patience of a monk when it came to stalking my family. I called my dad. Yeah, she's still here, he confirmed, his voice tight with frustration. Been here for 6 hours now. Every time we ask her to leave, she starts crying about how she needs to explain herself to you. What's she saying? The usual bullshit, Dad replied, and I could hear Mom agreeing in the background. She's going on about your good memories, holidays, trips, anniversaries, making it sound like you're throwing away years of happiness over nothing. Good memories. Sure, we'd had some. Every toxic relationship does. That's how they keep you hooked. But a few good moments don't erase months of systematic disrespect and public humiliation. A romantic vacation doesn't cancel out coming home to find your wife posting videos of herself making out with strangers. She keeps saying it was just one bad night, Dad continued. That she was peer pressured into it. That the alcohol made her do things she didn't mean. But son, I've seen those videos. That wasn't peer pressure. That was someone who wanted to hurt you. Bingo. Even my parents, who'd been married for 35 years and believed in working through problems, could see what Marissa was trying to hide behind her victim act. She's not taking responsibility for anything. Mom called out loud enough for me to hear. It's all excuses and blame shifting. The alcohol made me do it. My friends dared me. He should have trusted me more. Everything except I fucked up and I'm sorry. Around 7 p.m., Dad had apparently reached his limit. Look, honey, I heard him say in the background, his voice getting closer to the phone. You need to leave now? This isn't your house, and you're not welcome here anymore. I just need him to understand. Came Marissa's voice, faint but audible through the phone. We had such beautiful memories together. Our first Christmas, that trip to Napa, our anniversary dinner. Doesn't that count for something? Beautiful memories. She was right. We had made some good ones. But you know what's funny about memories? They don't mean much when the person you made them with turns out to be someone completely different than who you thought they were. Those memories don't excuse what you did, Dad said firmly. And they don't entitle you to camp out on our porch until you get your way. I can't live without him, Marissa said, her voice breaking. You don't understand. I made one mistake. One stupid, drunk mistake. And he's ready to throw away 3 years of marriage. One mistake. There it was again. The party, the Instagram stories, the public humiliation, the complete lack of accountability, all condensed into one convenient little mistake that I was being unreasonable for caring about. It wasn't a mistake. Mom's voice came through clearly now. Mistakes are accidental. What you did was intentional, cruel, and designed to hurt our son. And now you're trying to manipulate us into fixing what you broke. I could hear Marissa starting to cry. Real tears this time, not the calculated ones she usually deployed. But even through the sobs, she was still making excuses. The girls dare me to do it, she sobbed. They said I was too controlled by him, that I needed to prove I was my own person. It was peer pressure. I was drunk. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Peer pressure. At 28 years old. Married. With a mortgage and a joint bank account. But sure, blame it on peer pressure like she was a teenager at her first kegger. You're an adult, Dad said bluntly. Adults don't use peer pressure as an excuse for destroying their marriages. Please, Marissa begged. Just let me talk to him for 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain. He doesn't want to talk to you, Mom said. And frankly, after seeing what you did, I don't blame him. The conversation went on for another hour, my parents basically tag-teaming her with reality while she cried and made excuses. Finally, Dad delivered the ultimatum. You have 5 minutes to get off our property, or I'm calling the police. Fine, Marissa said, her voice shifting from desperate to cold in an instant. But this isn't over. That's when I knew I was dealing with someone who'd completely lost touch with reality. She'd publicly cheated, lied to both our families, stalked me for a week, and was now making threats because I wouldn't accept her non-apology for behavior that would make a soap opera villain blush. Did you hear that? Dad asked into the phone. I heard it, I confirmed. And it's exactly why I'm not going back to her. This wasn't over, according to Marissa. Well, she was right about that. But it wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. She'd escalated from manipulation to stalking to threats, and each move just proved how right I'd been to walk away. Time to set a trap. Sometimes the best way to catch a liar is to give them enough rope to hang themselves with. And after a week of Marissa's increasingly unhinged behavior, I realized she was practically begging for that rope. All I had to do was hand it to her with a smile and let her do what she did best, destroy herself with her own words. Thursday morning, I crafted the text message that would either end this nightmare or escalate it to levels that would require legal intervention. Either way, I'd have my answer about who I was really married to. We should talk privately. No interruptions. No family, no friends, just us. I think we owe each other that much. I hit send and watched the 3 dots appear almost immediately. She was probably staring at her phone, trying to decode whether this was surrender or another trap. The response came back in under 30 seconds. Yes. Thank you. When and where? The desperation was palpable even through text. All caps. Yes. like I'd just offered her a life preserver while she was drowning. Which, in a way, I guess I had. She was drowning in her own lies and manipulation, and I was offering her what looked like salvation. Saturday, 2 p.m. Your apartment. Just us. Perfect. I love you so much. We're going to fix this. Fix this. Right. Because there was definitely a way to fix public adultery, followed by a week of stalking and family manipulation. Some problems are like a shattered mirror. You can try to glue the pieces back together, but it'll never look the same, and you'll always see the cracks. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. I spent Friday night preparing like I was going into battle, which in a way I was. I charged my phone to 100%, tested the recording app 3 times, and mentally rehearsed the conversation I was about to have. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about getting the truth on record. Her apartment complex looked the same as always, but somehow everything felt different as I walked up to her door. Maybe because the last time I'd been here, I'd still believed our marriage was salvageable. Now I knew better. She answered the door before I could knock, which meant she'd been watching for me through the window like a lovesick teenager. The sight of her hit me harder than I'd expected, not because I missed her, but because of how obviously calculated everything was. The apartment was spotless. Not just clean, spotless. Every surface gleamed, every throw pillow was perfectly positioned, and there wasn't a single dish in the sink. Marissa had clearly spent hours preparing for this meeting, staging the environment to remind me of the domestic bliss we'd supposedly shared. She'd chosen her outfit just as carefully. A simple sundress that hit just above the knee, conservative enough to suggest she was a reformed woman, fitted enough to remind me what I was supposedly giving up. Her makeup was minimal but perfect, like she'd spent an hour creating the illusion of natural beauty. Her hair was styled in soft waves that made her look younger, more innocent. The whole scene screamed, loving wife waiting for her husband to come to his senses. It was masterful manipulation disguised as domestic normalcy. "You came," she said softly, stepping back to let me in. Her voice was gentle, vulnerable, completely different from the woman who'd threatened me on my parents' porch 3 days earlier. I said I would. I replied, slipping my phone into my jacket pocket with the recording app already running. "We need to talk." She'd prepared refreshments, my favorite beer, homemade cookies, even the good cheese and crackers she usually saved for company. Every detail was designed to remind me of what I was walking away from, to make me feel like an idiot for throwing away someone who clearly cared about making me comfortable. "Sit," she said, patting the couch beside her. "Please." I chose the chair across from her instead. Distance was important for what was coming next, both physical and emotional. Her face fell slightly at my seating choice, but she recovered quickly. "I'm glad you're here," she said, folding her hands in her lap like a repentant schoolgirl. "I've had so much time to think this week, and I realize how badly I screwed up." Screwed up. Interesting word choice. Not betrayed our marriage or humiliated you publicly. Just screwed up, like she'd forgotten to pick up milk from the store. "Tell me about it," I said, settling back in the chair. "Help me understand what happened that night." She took a deep breath, and I could see her accessing her prepared speech. This was going to be good. "It was peer pressure," she began, her voice soft and ashamed. "I know that sounds stupid at our age, but you don't know how the girls can be. They've been saying for months that you're too controlling, that I don't have enough freedom." There it was. Even in her confession, she was blaming me. I was too controlling, which justified her friends pressuring her to cheat. Beautiful logic. "Go on," I said neutrally. "They said I needed to prove I wasn't under your thumb," she continued, warming up to her victim narrative. "That I should show everyone I could do what I wanted. It was like a dare, you know? Like, if you're really free, prove it. A dare." 28-year-old married women apparently still played truth or dare, and the dare was to destroy their marriages in front of an audience. The maturity level was staggering. "So you kissed Logan because your friends dared you to?" "Yes," she said eagerly, like I'd finally understood her brilliant reasoning. "It wasn't about him. It wasn't about wanting him. It was about proving I wasn't controlled by you." The twisted logic was amazing. She'd publicly cheated on me to prove she wasn't controlled by me, which somehow made it better than if she'd just wanted to cheat. Like the motivation mattered more than the action. "And the Instagram stories?" I asked. "Was that also peer pressure?" She had the grace to look embarrassed about that. I was drunk and angry, she admitted. I felt like you'd abandoned me at the party, left me there to deal with everyone staring and whispering. So I wanted you to feel what I was feeling, what she was feeling. She'd felt abandoned, so she decided to make me feel humiliated. Eye for an eye, except in her version, public adultery was equivalent to leaving a party early. The thing is, she continued, leaning forward with this earnest expression, Logan was invited by the girls specifically. They planned this whole thing to test whether you really trusted me. Wait, what? They invited your ex-boyfriend to test my trust? I asked, making sure I was hearing this correctly. They wanted to see if you'd freak out or be cool about it. She explained like this made perfect sense. And when you got all jealous and possessive, it kind of proved their point. The mental gymnastics required to make this my fault were truly Olympic level. Her friends had orchestrated a situation designed to trigger jealousy. She'd responded by making out with her ex, and somehow this proved I was the problem for not being cool with orchestrated adultery. I regret it, she said suddenly, her voice cracking with what sounded like genuine emotion. I regret all of it. The kissing, the stories, everything. I just wanted to feel free for one night, and it got completely out of hand. Free. There was that word again. Freedom from the oppressive burden of not cheating on your spouse. Do you still have contact with Logan? I asked. No, she said quickly. Too quickly. That night was it. I swear. I haven't talked to him since. What about the other guys from the party? What other guys? But her eyes shifted when she said it, and I knew she was lying. The ones you were dancing with. The ones in the stories. Oh, them. No, those were just random people. I don't even remember their names. Random people she'd been grinding on and making out with. Random people whose hands had been all over my wife while she documented it for posterity. But she didn't even remember their names, so that made it okay. I know this looks bad, she said, reaching across the space between us like she wanted to touch me but didn't quite dare. But you have to understand, I was hurt and angry and drunk, and I made terrible decisions. But they were just decisions, not reflections of how I feel about you. Terrible decisions. That's what we were calling it now. Not betrayal, not adultery, not public humiliation. Just some unfortunate decision-making that happened to involve her tongue in other men's mouths. I love you, she said, and for the first time since I'd arrived, she looked genuinely vulnerable. I love you so much that the thought of losing you is killing me. This week has been the worst week of my entire life. The worst week of her life. She'd spent it stalking me, manipulating our families, and making threats, but it had been terrible for her. The victim complex was truly astounding. I know I hurt you, she continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. I know I crossed lines I shouldn't have crossed. But please, please don't let one night destroy everything we've built together. One night. Still minimizing, still trying to compress months of disrespect and a public betrayal into a single evening of poor judgment. I leaned forward, making sure my voice was gentle and understanding. I need to see what really happened that night, I said. I need to understand the full scope of what I'm supposed to forgive. She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. What do you mean? Do you have videos from that night? From your phone or from your friends? I need to see everything if I'm going to move past this. The request hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. She could refuse and prove she was still hiding things, or she could comply and show me evidence that would probably destroy any chance of reconciliation. Her face went through a complex series of emotions: hope, fear, calculation, resignation. Finally, she reached for her phone. There might be a few, she said hesitantly, but they look worse than they actually were. You have to understand, phones make everything seem more dramatic than it really was. Phones don't lie, I thought. People do. She unlocked her phone with trembling fingers, opened her photo gallery, and hesitated for a moment before turning the screen toward me. These don't tell the whole story, she said as I took the phone from her hands. She was right about that. They told a much worse story than I'd imagined. Taking Marissa's phone felt like accepting a loaded weapon from someone who'd already shot you once. I knew whatever was on that device would either confirm my worst fears or reveal something so much worse that my current nightmare would look like a pleasant daydream by comparison. The photo gallery opened to her recent pictures, and Jesus Christ, it was like scrolling through the digital documentation of a marriage's death. She had 15 videos from Derek's party. 15. Not the 7 Instagram stories I'd seen. Those were apparently just the highlight reel. She'd been documenting the whole night like she was making a fucking documentary about infidelity. Start with that one, she said nervously, pointing to a video thumbnail that showed her laughing with a group of people. But remember, it looks worse on camera than it actually was. Right, because cameras are notorious for making innocent behavior look slutty. Everyone knows phones have that special, make everything seem like cheating filter built right in. I hit play on the first video and immediately understood why she'd been hesitant to show me. This wasn't just dancing or innocent flirting. This was my wife performing for the camera like she was auditioning for a reality show called How to Destroy Your Marriage in 10 Easy Steps. The video showed her grinding against some guy I didn't recognize, her hands in his hair while he gripped her waist. But the worst part wasn't even the physical contact. It was her face. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way that made my stomach turn. See, she said quickly as the video ended. It's just dancing. Everyone was dancing like that. Everyone. Right. Because grinding on strangers was apparently the universal dance style at parties now. I must have missed that memo from the International Dance Committee. Next one, I said, scrolling to the second video. This one was worse. Much worse. It showed her whispering something into Logan's ear while he laughed and pulled her closer. The intimacy was obvious, undeniable. These weren't the actions of someone being peer-pressured into proving a point. These were the actions of someone who wanted to be exactly where she was. What are you whispering to him? I asked. I don't remember, she said quickly. I was drunk. It was pee. Small talk. Sure. Because everyone whispers sweet nothings about the weather and current events into their ex-boyfriend's ear while pressing their body against his. The third video made me want to throw her phone against the wall. It was the kiss, the one I'd witnessed in person, but filmed from a different angle. I could see her friends in the background, Grace holding up her own phone to record, Tina clapping and laughing. Leah cheering like this was the greatest moment in human history. But what I hadn't seen from across the room was Marissa's reaction after the kiss ended. She looked directly into Grace's camera and smiled. Not an embarrassed, oops, I can't believe I just did that smile, but a triumphant, satisfied grin that said mission accomplished. You smiled, I said, pausing the video on her face. Right after you kissed him, you looked into the camera and smiled. I was drunk, she repeated, but her voice was getting smaller. I wasn't thinking clearly. You look pretty clear-headed to me, I said, scrolling to the next video. Let's keep going. Video 4 showed her accepting drinks from multiple guys, laughing and flirting like she was working the room at a singles bar. Video 5 was her slow dancing with someone who definitely wasn't Logan, her head on his shoulder, looking content and peaceful. You're making this seem worse than it was, she said, her voice taking on that defensive edge I knew so well. Everyone was drinking, everyone was having fun. It wasn't personal. Not personal. Making out with her ex-boyfriend while her husband watched wasn't personal. The logic was bulletproof. Videos 6 through 10 were a montage of escalating behavior. More dancing, more touching, more intimate moments with men who weren't her husband. Each one was a little knife twist, but I kept my expression neutral. I was gathering evidence, not getting emotionally invested in the train wreck I was watching. Video 11 made my blood pressure spike. It showed her in a corner of Derek's living room with two guys I didn't recognize, all three of them laughing while one of them kissed her neck. She looked like she was having the time of her life. Who are these guys? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. Friends of Derek's, maybe? Everyone was just loose that night. Inhibited. It was that kind of party. That kind of party. The kind where married women make out with strangers while their husbands watch. Apparently, I'd been going to the wrong kinds of parties my whole life. Keep going, I said. Videos 12 and 13 were more of the same. My wife treating Derek's birthday party like her personal sexual awakening tour. But video 14 was where things got really interesting. It started after I'd left the party, based on the timestamp. The video showed Marissa back with Logan, but this time there was no audience of friends cheering her on. This was just them, in what looked like Derek's bedroom, and holy shit, this wasn't just kissing anymore. Logan's hands were everywhere, under her dress, in her hair, gripping her ass while she kissed him with the kind of passion I hadn't seen from her in our bedroom in over a year. She was pressed against the wall, her legs wrapped around his waist, and the sounds she was making. Turn it off, she said suddenly, lunging for the phone. That's enough. But I pulled it away, pausing the video on a frame that showed her face in profile. She looked lost in the moment, completely absorbed in what she was doing. This wasn't peer pressure or drunken mistakes or proving a point to her friends. This was a woman getting exactly what she wanted. It looks worse on video, she said desperately. Cameras make everything seem more intense. Marissa, I said calmly. His hands were under your dress. It didn't go that far, she said quickly. We just kissed. It looked like more, but it was just kissing. Just kissing. With his hands up her dress, her legs around his waist, pressed against a wall in someone's bedroom. The definition of just kissing had apparently expanded significantly since I last checked. There's one more, I said, scrolling to video 15. No, she said, reaching for the phone again. You don't need to see that one. It's not important. Not important. Which meant it was the most important one of all. I hit play before she could stop me. The final video was a masterpiece of betrayal. It showed the aftermath, Marissa and Logan fixing their clothes, laughing about something, her running her fingers through her hair to make it look less like she'd been horizontal 5 minutes earlier. You could hear her voice clearly. God, I needed that. I forgot how good we were together. I forgot how good we were together. She'd said that about her ex-boyfriend. About the man she'd just been intimate with in someone else's bedroom while her husband drove home alone. Turn it off, she whispered, her face completely drained of color. But I let it play to the end, where Logan kissed her forehead and said, "Call me tomorrow." And she responded with, "Definitely." Definitely. She'd planned to call him the next day. This wasn't a one-time drunken mistake. It was the beginning of something. I set her phone down on the coffee table and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman sitting across from me bore no resemblance to the person I'd married. That person had been caring, honest, loyal. This person was a stranger wearing my wife's face. It looks worse than it was, she said again, but her voice was barely audible now. Actually, I said, reaching into my pocket, I think it looks exactly like what it was. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. The red recording light was blinking steadily, and the timer showed 37 minutes and counting. Her face went completely white. You recorded this? Every word, I confirmed. Your confession about the peer pressure, the plan set up with Logan, the admission that you were going to call him the next day. All of it. She stared at my phone like it was a venomous snake. You tricked me. No, I said. I gave you a chance to tell the truth, and you chose to lie instead. Even when you thought we were reconciling, even when you thought I was coming back to you, you still couldn't be honest about what happened. The tears started then. Real ones this time, not the calculated crying she'd been using all week. These were the tears of someone who'd just realized they'd completely fucked themselves over. Please don't use that recording, she begged. Please. I'll do anything. I'll delete everything. I'll never talk to Logan again. I'll change completely. Too late, I said, standing up. You had a week to tell me the truth. Instead, you lied to me, stalked me, manipulated our families, and just now tried to gaslight me even when you thought we were getting back together. She collapsed forward, her head in her hands. Oh God, what have I done? You showed me exactly who you really are, I said, and I'm finally smart enough to believe you. Hashtag Chapter 10, her collapse, my freedom. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. But let me tell you something. Revenge served with digital evidence and family group chats hits different. It's not just cold. It's Arctic fucking freeze your soul solid satisfying. I sat in my car outside Marissa's apartment building for exactly 3 minutes, composing the message that would end this nightmare once and for all. The recording was already uploaded to the cloud. The videos were saved in multiple locations, and I had enough evidence to convince anyone with half a brain that my wife was a lying, cheating sociopath who tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. Time to share the wealth. I created a group message that included both sets of parents and Clara, the nuclear option, the digital equivalent of dropping a truth bomb on everyone who'd been fed Marissa's victim narrative for the past week. The message was simple. Since there seems to be confusion about what happened at Derek's party, I thought everyone should see the actual evidence. Then I attached everything. The videos from her phone showing the escalating infidelity, the audio recording of her confession where she admitted it was all planned, the screenshots of her Instagram stories where she'd called herself single. 3 years of marriage reduced to a digital evidence folder that painted a picture so damning it would make a prosecutor weep with joy. I hit send and watched my phone light up like a Christmas tree. My mom texted back within 30 seconds. "Proud of you, son." Dad followed immediately. "She's finished. Good riddance." Clara's response was pure poetry. "Holy shit, what a psychopath. I'm changing the locks on my house in case she shows up here too." But the real entertainment came from Marissa's parents. 20 minutes of absolute silence, then a curt message from Patricia. "Marissa, come home immediately." No apology for calling me vindictive. No acknowledgement that they'd spent the week harassing me based on complete lies. Just a summons for their daughter to return home and face whatever music was about to play. I was still sitting in my car, watching the digital fireworks, when Marissa came stumbling out of her building. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Which, in a way, she had. The ghost of her carefully constructed lies, now thoroughly dead and buried. She spotted my car and ran toward it like I was her last hope for salvation. I rolled down the window, curious to hear what excuse she'd come up with for this latest development. "You sent it to everyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My parents, your parents, everyone. Just the people you lied to," I replied calmly. Seemed like they deserved to know the truth. She collapsed against my car door, literally fell to her knees on the asphalt like some kind of dramatic movie heroine. "Don't do this," she begged, grabbing my arm through the open window. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll delete everything. I'll change completely. I'll never see Logan again." "Too late for all that," I said, gently but firmly removing her hand from my arm. "You had multiple chances to tell the truth. Instead, you chose to lie, manipulate, and gaslight everyone who cared about you." "I was scared," she sobbed. "I was scared you'd leave me if you knew the whole truth." The irony was beautiful. She'd been scared I'd leave her if I knew the truth, so she'd decided to lie about it, which guaranteed I'd leave her when I eventually found out. The logic was flawless. "This is the last time we'll ever speak," I told her, my voice steady and final. "Contact me again, directly or through other people, and I'll file harassment charges." Her face crumpled completely. "You can't mean that. We're married. We took vows." "Yeah, we did," I agreed. "You broke them." "I'm honoring the part about till death do us part. This marriage died last Saturday night." I started the engine, and she stumbled backward but didn't leave. Just stood there in the parking lot, crying and broken, finally experiencing the consequences of her actions. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of her in my rearview mirror. She was still on her knees, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling anyone who might listen to her latest sob story about the cruel husband who'd abandoned her. My phone started buzzing before I'd made it out of the parking lot. Voice message after voice message, 20 of them in the span of 10 minutes. "Don't do this. Please. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Answer me. You can't just leave it like this. I'll kill myself if you don't come back. Please, I'm begging you." Each message was more hysterical than the last, her voice getting higher and more desperate with every plea. But here's the beautiful thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you're there, threats of going deeper don't scare you anymore. I turned my phone off and smiled. Actually smiled, for the first time in months that wasn't forced or fake. The silence was incredible. No buzzing, no notifications, no emotional manipulation disguised as love. Just pure, clean quiet that felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. That night, I sat on my couch, our couch, and ordered pizza for one. I watched whatever I wanted on TV without negotiating. I went to bed at a reasonable hour without waiting for someone to come home from God knows where. I slept through the night without being woken up by drunk confessions or late-night phone calls. It was the most peaceful night I'd had in years. Sunday morning brought a knock at my door, not frantic pounding or dramatic sobbing, just a quiet knock. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize holding an envelope. "Process server," she said when I opened the door. "Are you Marcus Thompson?" "That's me." "These are for you," she said, handing me the envelope with a sympathetic smile. "Sorry about your situation." Inside were divorce papers. Marissa had beaten me to the punch by exactly 12 hours. I laughed out loud reading through them. She was citing irreconcilable differences and emotional abandonment. The woman who'd publicly cheated on me was claiming I'd abandoned her emotionally. The victim narrative was so strong it had survived even filing for divorce. But buried in the legal language was the real kicker. She was asking for alimony. The woman who destroyed our marriage was demanding I pay her for the privilege of being rid of her. I called my lawyer Monday morning. By Tuesday, I'd filed my counterpetition with enough evidence to convince any judge that Marissa's version of events was complete fiction. The videos, the recording, the text messages, everything was documented, cataloged, and ready for court. She'd thought cheating on me to my face would put me in my place. She'd thought I'd crawl back like I always had, desperate and apologetic and grateful for whatever scraps of affection she was willing to throw me. Instead, I'd walked away, and I'd left her to drown in her own lies. The freedom was intoxicating. No more walking on eggshells, no more making excuses for someone else's shitty behavior, no more pretending that disrespect was love. For the first time in years, I could breathe.